for watching my channel. I wanted to share something with you over the past week, 2 weeks, month. We've had Kyland K, DanTheMan, ClusterM releasing some great modifications for the SNES, the SNES Classic. I say SNES, that's what we call it in the UK and I guess sometimes around Europe, but the SNES Classic is a great console. And with the stock games, as you can see here, it's still great. You know, you get, I think it's 21 games, it's more, I don't know. But you get the games that are included with it, including Star Fox 2, which is fantastic. And as you can see, there is no memory card in the back of this. These are just the stock games. But once you start modding it, by that I mean hooking it up to your computer, adding additional games, maybe even doing what I've done and going as far as doing the USB host modification. It enables you to be able to add USB dongles. So obviously you can add USB controllers or a USB memory stick and then boot to external games. So, you know, the limits really are only the size of the USB stick that you put in there, or even the processor that's inside your Super Nintendo Classic. So what we have here is what I'd like to think is the best setup I've made so far of the Super Nintendo Classic. So the stock, I've got all my original saves that I had from day one when I bought the console. And it behaves just like yours probably does if you've got one. Or you can power down the console and you can plug in my micro SD card with micro SD card adapter, which I'm going to do now. Now the first thing you'll notice when booting the USB host modification is that you can change the boot screen. So I've decided to go for something that looks semi-official. It's Nintendo's own logo, the Super Nintendo Classic Mini logo as well, which looks like that. I've chosen also to boot it to the US firmware because mine's a European console from the UK. So I've chosen to have it boot externally to that USA firmware with the nice purple buttons at the bottom there, which is great. The other thing I've done is I've kept the original games that are on there. These are separate from the internal games, so I can obviously create my own saves on here. So these are just the internal games, but repeated. Then I've got different folders for different ROMs, if you like, that are all running on RetroArch. So I have a Nintendo 64 set of ROMs, only a small collection. I could add a lot more. Again, it's all themed with a US theme, even though it's running on a European console. Next up, we have the NES, and I've got lots of the NES ROMs. I just, let's say I acquired them, and as you can see, I've labelled them with the letters, and I've just put the logos of the system on the icon there. Lots of games in each one of those. In fact, the fullest collection I could find at the time. Next up, Super Nintendo. So I've done exactly the same thing. I've got all folders with all the different games in there. So here's a list of the games beginning with B. And as you can see, I've maximized the collection by limiting it to the 30 or so that you need in order to fill up the thumbnails at the bottom here. So that's cool. So that's the Super Nintendo Collection. On top of the Super Nintendo Collection, I didn't stop there. I went further. I then started to look at the Sega consoles, which I have. In fact, I don't have a Master System at this time. But here's the Master System. And again, this was the fullest collection I could find. I got rid of all the prototype ROMs that weren't, or the testing ROMs that weren't too important. I just decided to keep the games in there. So I'm just going to play one of my favourites from back in the day. Between M and P, it was Outrun. Sure, it doesn't look as good as any of the other versions, especially the arcade game, but you know, it's just incredible that they made Outrun to run on these consoles, as you can see. Just ridiculous. Back in the 80s when we used to play on these games and think they were great. I remember I had an 8-bit computer, I had the Commodore and I had a ZX Spectrum. But the sound is absolutely terrible on these games. But it's still nice to have them, as part of the collection. I have a soft reset as well where I hold down and select to go back to the kind of menu screen, which is cool. Just makes it a lot easier. It took a long time actually to get all of the artwork and put them all together. But I think it's worth it at the end of it. It certainly makes my Christmas anyway. So next up we've got the Sega Mega Drive, and inside and that's obviously known as the Genesis in the US. But we start here with the 32X games, and then we go through the usual games there for the Sega Mega Drive. So Outrun's going to be in there, Afterburner, Golden Axe, all your favourites. 32X, I can't remember whether I did split these up. I did split them up in between a couple of folders. And as you can see, there's plenty of games in here to play as well. So it's just about having a full collection of retro games all within one particular device. Nice and tidy as well, as you can see if I lift this up. It's just the power coming into the USB on the go with my memory card plugged in. And it doesn't look much different to a standard off-the-shelf SNES Classic Mini. So I could go on and on. I've got Neo Geo games in there as well, all sorted again. In fact, these ones are just a few of the collection that I have, but they could all be added to and sorted to by letter. And the Neo Geo games run really well. In fact, I really want to get a Neo Geo. What was it called again? The kind of new one that came out, was it an X, Neo Geo X? They made these USB Neo Geo arcade sticks. So one of those in theory should work if I use a USB hub. So I look forward to doing that in future. Sony PS1 game in there as well. I chose something that wasn't too complicated. I chose Ridge Racer. Nice simple game to play. I'll quickly boot that. So obviously that's got the really classic old school game as it loads. Oh, didn't do it quite in time. So this thing does play PlayStation 1 games, which I'm just going to show you now, with sound as well.
3, 2, 1, go!
Terrible start. Just got some lights on. There we go. So the frame rate's really good. Ideally, I'd like to have some kind of adapter so I could use an official PlayStation pad, or even a Bluetooth dongle that would allow me to use Bluetooth pads, and that obviously would enable me to use a PlayStation pad on my SNES Classic. Yeah, look at that. King of the Drift, apart from crashing. It's a great game, obviously, superseded by later Ridge Racer games, and there's a lot of clipping as well on this title. But it was good for the time. I remember when I first got my PlayStation after playing Ridge Racer in the arcade for months and months and months, and then all of a sudden being able to play it at home. It was fantastic. So again, soft reset works even with PlayStation games, kicking you out there to the title screen. Does tend to take a little bit longer with the larger games, but as you can see, you can resume older games as well. So if I hit that, it resumes from where I were last at. So I had a game there previously ready to go. Finally, and this is the great bit about what I wanted to show you, I come back to the main menu. And as you can see, I've got PlayStation there. I've even got some TurboGrafx games. I've got Bonk 1, 2 and 3. And of course all those ones. But this is the great thing. I recently had a chat with Kyland K, and he said that we could still do the dual boot. So, you know, as well as having the European firmware native with nothing else on the plain console, the US firmware on the memory stick, I've also got it dual booting to an NES Classic, which it does incredibly quick. Look at that. I was actually shocked by the speed at which that booted to the NES Classic. But all the NES Classic games are in there. It's just fantastic being able to do that. And of course, there's a little icon at the end, which allows you to go straight back to the SNES Classic. So obviously toggling between the two, just a press of a button. It's great. best setup yet. Of course, I can play all the NES games in the Super Nintendo side, or I can come on this side for some real retro fun. I've got NES Classic pads as well, which I can plug into the Nintendo and play them there, but I think it's just absolutely fantastic. And of course, any saves that you make on here, I'm guessing, will stay on this side. Don't remember it being in black and white, but there you go. In fact, I'm pretty sure it was in colour. So I'll just come back to the main menu. Soft reset works here as well, and I'll save that. I wonder if the other games are in black and white. Okay, so this is something that happens every time I make a video. There's always some issues. Obviously, this is retro because I guess most people only had a black and white TV in the 80s in the bedroom. But so it seems that there's still some work to be done. I'm not sure why it is black and white, but clearly there's something wrong with this particular setup. Hopefully, Kyland K, who I know now subscribes to my channel, can take a look at this one and give me an idea of what might be the problem here with having black and white ROMs. They are all running with, let me save that. They are all running with the original Nintendo emulator. These aren't running with RetroArch, so I'm not quite sure what the problem is with this one. But no, obviously this is something that I need to fix to make it truly great, but it still is the best setup yet. It's Christmas Day. I'm having a great time. I'm about to, in fact, in maybe even 10 minutes, I'm about to start eating turkey, which is a great thing, I guess, and all the trimmings. So, Merry Christmas. Thank you very much for subscribing to my channel. If you're watching live, hey, come on, it's Christmas Day. Go spend some time with your family or friends, or even play some great games. You don't want to be watching YouTube. Thanks very much, guys. Have a great day. Have a great Christmas. Speak to you soon.